High Arbiter Kethvar stood before the great obelisk of Prima Sanctum, his 4 arms trembling as he held the sacred petition scroll. Around him, representatives from all 12 species of the Galactic Collective knelt on the crystal floor. The air hummed with divine energy, making his scales itch. The Void Swarm had already consumed 3 star systems. Entire worlds simply vanished into hungry darkness that ate light itself. Nothing could stop it. Their best weapons, their smartest scientists, their most powerful war fleets, all useless against this cosmic horror that fed on energy and grew stronger with each meal. Great ones, Kethvar spoke to the towering obelisk, his voice echoing in the sacred chamber. We come seeking aid in our darkest hour. The Void Swarm threatens all life in our galaxy. Our weapons cannot touch it. Our shields cannot stop it. We need help. The obelisk pulsed with brilliant light. When the gods spoke, their voices shook reality itself. Every being in the chamber felt the words in their bones, their minds, their very souls. What aid do you seek, children of the stars? Kethvar swallowed hard. Behind him, he heard the sharp intake of breath from the other representatives. They had debated this for cycles, fought about it in the council chambers. But with the Void Swarm consuming everything in its path, they had no choice. We ask for the right to contact the humans. Silence fell like a hammer blow. Even the constant hum of divine energy seemed to pause. The crystalline Velthari representative beside him began to glow with nervous energy. The gaseous Nimue delegate started swirling faster. Everyone felt the god's displeasure. When the divine voice returned, it carried the weight of cosmic fury. The humans are forbidden to you. Their kind brings only destruction wrapped in the guise of salvation. Seek other paths, children of the stars. For to call upon humanity is to invite monsters into your realm. But great ones, Kethvar dared to continue. Our children are dying. Entire worlds burn in the void. Surely. Silence. The word hit him like a physical blow, sending him to his knees. We have spoken. The humans remain exiled beyond the galactic rim. Find another way, or face the consequences of your weakness. The divine presence withdrew, leaving the chamber cold and empty. The representatives slowly picked themselves up from the floor, their faces showing despair, anger, and fear in equal measure. Ancient Keeper the Lax was the first to break the silence. The eldest of the Velthari, his crystal body had witnessed 10,000 years of galactic history. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of ages. There are things the gods do not speak of, he said quietly. Old records, hidden truths. Perhaps it is time you learned why humanity was truly exiled. Back in his private chambers, Kethvar listened as the Lax revealed secrets that had been buried for millennia. The Old Keeper projected holographic images from ancient data crystals, records that predated the current age, fragments from a time when humanity was part of the Galactic Collective. They were not always monsters, the Lax explained. Once, humans were just another species among many, curious, creative, perhaps a bit stubborn. But when the first extinction war came, when the Galaxy Eaters threatened all life, humanity showed us what they truly were. The holograms showed impossible battles. Human ships that bent space around them like paper. Weapons that could kill ideas themselves. Humans fighting wars across multiple dimensions at once, using tactics that hurt to think about. They turned their home star into a weapon, the Lax continued. Built ships powered by black holes. Created devices that could erase things from existence so completely that the universe forgot they ever existed. And when the Galaxy Eaters came, humanity didn't just defeat them, they made them afraid. Kethvar stared at the images. If they were so powerful, why exile them? Quote, because they began to surpass the gods themselves. The Old Keeper's crystal body dimmed. Humans fought a war against the laws of physics and won. They made the universe work differently through pure determination. The gods realized that if humanity continued, they would eventually fix everything in the galaxy, whether it needed fixing or not. So the exile was not to protect the galaxy from humanity. It was to protect humanity from having to constantly save everyone else. Vlax turned off the hologram. The gods knew that once humans started solving problems, they would never stop. Over the following days, more reports came in. The Void Swarm had consumed 2 more systems. Billions were dead or fled as refugees. The collective's greatest minds worked desperately for solutions, but every plan failed. The swarm grew stronger with each meal, and their conventional weapons only fed it more energy. In the council chambers, arguments raged. Some species demanded they respect the divine prohibition. Others insisted that survival trumped religious law. The Torvani war singers spoke of honor in the face of extinction. The logical Kelnari ran probability calculations that showed 0 chance of conventional victory. "We have perhaps 2 cycles before total galactic extinction," announced senior analyst Vex Moore of the Kelnari. "The swarm's consumption rate is accelerating. At current projections, it will reach the core worlds within 1 standard cycle. Then we must consider the forbidden option," Kethvar said quietly. The chamber erupted. Half the delegates shouted support, the other half threatened to withdraw from the collective entirely. Some species promised civil war rather than violate divine mandate. But as the arguments raged, another message arrived. The swarm had reached the outer colonies of the Velthari homeworld cluster. In the holographic display, they watched entire planets simply vanish into hungry darkness. Kethvar made his decision. Whether the gods approved or not, whether it doomed his soul to eternal punishment, he would not watch the galaxy die while clinging to divine law. He would find a way to summon the monsters, even if it meant becoming one himself. The gods had forbidden asking for human aid. But sometimes, Kethvar thought grimly, salvation required damnation. And if humanity truly were monsters, then perhaps monsters were exactly what the galaxy needed. 3 days after the divine rejection, Kethvar stood in his private office, staring at a star map showing the void swarm's advance. Red zones marked consumed systems. Yellow zones showed evacuating populations. The advancing darkness looked like a cancer spreading through the galaxy's spiral arms. A soft chime announced visitors. Scholar Prime Velandra of the Velthari entered, her crystalline body pulsing with nervous light. Behind her came Tech Adept Drix, his cybernetic implants whirring softly, and warrior poet Nimbus of the Torvani, whose honor scars glowed faintly in the dim light. "You received my message," Kethvar said, without turning around. "A mission to the lost archive of Mordoon," Velandra replied. "The quarantined world. You know it's forbidden." 5. Many things are forbidden these days. Kethvar finally faced them. But if we're going to break divine law, we need to understand what we're truly summoning. The ancient records on Mordoon contain the complete history of humanity's time in the collective. Zrix's mechanical eye focused on the star map. The void swarm consumed the Keftar system 12 hours ago. 7 billion souls. At this rate, we have perhaps 50 standard days before it reaches the core worlds. Then we have no time to waste. Kethvar handed Velandra a data crystal. Official authorization for archaeological research. If anyone asks, you're studying pre-exile defensive technologies. The journey to Mordoon took 2 days through hyperspace. The dead world hung in space like a gray pearl, its surface scarred by ancient weapons. Automated warning beacons still broadcasted their eternal message. Quarantine zone, divine prohibition, entry forbidden. Nimbus spoke the traditional Torvani prayer for entering cursed places as their shuttle descended. The archive building rose from the planet's surface like a massive crystal pyramid, its walls still humming with preservation fields after all these millennia. Inside, they found corridors lined with data storage units, stretching into darkness. Valandra's natural ability to interface with crystal-based systems made her the perfect guide through the ancient filing systems. Her body glowed brighter as she accessed deeper data layers. "Here," she whispered, her light pulsing with excitement and terror. "The human files. Classification level. By all the sacred crystals, this is rated higher than God-level clearance. 1. The first record seemed normal enough. Humanity joining the collective, 5,000 years ago. Their home system, Sol, a small yellow star with one inhabited world. Initial contact reports described them as curious, innovative, and remarkably stubborn. But as they dug deeper, the records became more disturbing. Listen to this. Valandra read aloud. Human Engineering Corps requests permission to optimize local spacetime around contested star system. Request denied due to potential universal constant violations. Zhrix's mechanical parts clicked nervously. What does optimize spacetime mean? They found the answer in the next file. During the Iron Plague War, humans had indeed optimized a star system. They had convinced the laws of physics to work more efficiently in that region. Ships traveled faster than light by simply asking space nicely. Weapons hit harder by being more determined. This is impossible, Nimbus muttered, his honor scars flickering. You cannot argue with the universe. Apparently humans can, Valandra replied, her voice shaking. And they win. The deeper files revealed more impossibilities. Humanity's war against the entropy lords, where they had weaponized hope itself. The campaign of impossible things, where human soldiers had defeated abstract concepts in battle. The Great Fixing, where humanity had repaired a damaged dimension using nothing but cosmic-grade duct tape and determination. But the most terrifying record was labeled simply, the Physics War. They fought the laws of physics? Zhrix asked in disbelief. And won, Valandra whispered. According to this, humans declared that certain universal constants were inefficient and poorly designed. When the universe disagreed, they went to war against reality itself. The file contained battle reports that hurt to read. Humans had built ships that traveled by refusing to acknowledge distance. They had created weapons that killed by making their targets embarrassed to exist. Their final assault had been led by someone called Murphy's General, who had convinced the universe that anything that could go wrong would go wrong for their enemies. The war ended when humans offered the universe a peace treaty, Valandra continued reading. Reality accepted, on the condition that humans would only break physics for important reasons and would try to put things back afterward. Nimbus sat down heavily. These are not beings. These are living catastrophes. But the final file explained everything. It was a report from the gods themselves, stamped with divine seals that still radiated power. The humans have begun to surpass us, the divine message read. They treat impossibility as a minor inconvenience. They solve problems by changing how problems work. If this continues, they will eventually fix the entire universe according to human standards. While their intentions are good, the cosmic consequences are unpredictable. We must exile them before they accidentally improve reality beyond all recognition. The exile had been voluntary. Humanity had agreed to leave rather than risk damaging the galaxy with their helpful nature. But they had left behind something important. The Human Resonance Protocol. Valandra found it buried in the deepest files. A ritual that combined science with forbidden arts, a way to breach the exile barriers and call humanity home. But it required a terrible sacrifice. Whoever performs the summoning ritual will be cut off from divine grace forever, she read. Branded as a heretical apostate. The gods will never forgive this violation of their will. Outside the archive, they sat in their shuttle watching the stars. In the distance, they could see the void swarms advance, a growing patch of absolute darkness consuming everything in its path. "We have the knowledge," Velandra said quietly. "But the price? Eternal damnation for whoever summons them," Jrix added. Kethvar activated his communicator. "This is High Arbiter Kethvar. I'm authorizing the Human Resonance Protocol. Prepare the ritual site on Keftar." "Sir," came the shocked reply. "Keftar is directly in the swarm's path. You'll have perhaps 6 hours before it arrives. Then we'll have to work quickly." Kethvar closed the channel and looked at his companions. "I won't order any of you to help with this. The gods will punish everyone involved." Nimbus stood, his honor scars blazing bright. "Better to face divine punishment than let the galaxy die through cowardice." Jrix's mechanical eye clicked. "Calculated probability of conventional victory, 0. Probability of surviving divine wrath, unknown. Acceptable odds." Velandra's crystal body pulsed with determination. "The humans once fought a war for the entire galaxy. The least we can do is risk our souls to bring them home." As their shuttle jumped to hyperspace, heading for Keftar and the approaching darkness, Kethvar wondered what kind of monsters they were about to unleash upon the galaxy. But with the void swarm consuming everything in its path, maybe monsters were exactly what they needed, even if those monsters had once been forbidden by the gods themselves. The dying world of Keftar spun slowly beneath their shuttle as they descended. The planet's surface was already cracking from the approaching void swarm's influence. Reality itself seemed to weaken as the cosmic horror drew near, making the air shimmer with unnatural colors. Kethvar stood on the ritual platform they had built in 6 frantic hours. Ancient symbols covered the crystalline floor, copied from the forbidden archives. Velandra had grown the crystal structures directly from her own body, weakening herself to create the necessary geometric patterns. Jrix had installed quantum amplifiers at precise points, his cybernetic systems smoking from overload. Nimbus stood guard with weapons that probably wouldn't work against what was coming. Above them, the sky began to darken as the void swarm's leading edge reached the outer atmosphere. Stars simply vanished as the hungry darkness consumed their light. "Energy readings are off the scale," Jrix reported, his mechanical voice crackling with interference. "The swarm will reach us in 43 minutes. Kethvar looked down at the ritual scroll in his hands. The Human Resonance Protocol was written in 12 different languages, each line more forbidden than the last. He could feel the gods' disapproval like ice in his bones. By performing this ritual, he would be cut off from divine grace forever. But the alternative was watching the galaxy die. "Begin the sequence," he commanded. Velandra's crystal body blazed with light as she activated the quantum resonators. Energy flowed through the ancient symbols, creating patterns that hurt to look at. The very air began to vibrate with power that reality didn't quite know how to handle. Kethvar began the incantation. The words felt wrong in his mouth, like speaking backwards or thinking in colors that didn't exist. Each syllable sent ripples through local space-time, creating cracks in the exile barriers that had kept humanity locked away beyond the galactic rim. "Signal strength increasing," Jrix announced. "We're punching through the dimensional walls. Something's responding from the exile zone." The ritual reached its climax as Kethvar spoke the final words. Reality tore open like wet paper, creating a wound in space that bled strange light. Through the gap, they glimpsed the exile zone, a place of twisted stars and impossible geometries where humanity had been making their home for millennia. And then, with a sound like the universe hiccuping, 3 figures materialized on the platform. The first was clearly a soldier. Commander Sarah Chen wore battle armor that looked like it had seen impossible wars. Cybernetic implants covered half her face, glowing with soft blue light. Her eyes held the weight of someone who had stared into the abyss until the abyss blinked first. The second was a scientist. Dr. Marcus Webb appeared normal until you looked into his eyes, which contained swirling galaxies and distant stars. When he moved, space seemed to bend slightly around him, as if reality was being polite. The third being had once been human. Now it called itself Entropy's daughter. It existed partially outside normal space-time, appearing as a shifting shadow with far too many dimensions. When it spoke, probability itself seemed to listen. Sarah Chen looked around the platform, taking in the approaching darkness above them with professional interest. Huh. Void swarm. Haven't seen one of these in ages. Class 7 reality breach. Dr. Webb added casually, consulting a device that displayed information in colors that didn't exist. Fairly standard extra-dimensional intrusion. Simple energy conversion model with basic consciousness overlay. Entropy's daughter laughed, a sound like cosmic background radiation having a good time. They called us monsters to deal with this little thing? Kethvar stepped forward, his forearms trembling. Great ones. We are desperate. This swarm has consumed entire star systems. Our weapons cannot touch it. Our defenses are useless. We need... You called us monsters, Sarah interrupted, her cybernetic eye focusing on him with uncomfortable intensity. And monsters you shall have. The approaching void swarm was now visible as a wall of absolute darkness rising from the horizon. It moved like liquid night, consuming everything in its path. Where it touched the atmosphere, reality simply stopped working correctly. Dr. Webb pulled out what looked like a simple wrench and began adjusting local spacetime. This planet's quantum structure is all wrong for what we need to do. Entropy's daughter, can you make the local physics more cooperative? The shadow being gestured casually. And suddenly, the laws of physics became more flexible. Gravity decided it would work better if it responded to emotional state rather than mass. The electromagnetic spectrum expanded to include the color friendship and the wavelength stubborn determination. What are you doing? Nimbus demanded, his honor scars flickering with confusion. Creating a logic bomb, Sarah explained cheerfully as she began setting up equipment that shouldn't exist. See, the void swarm operates by consuming energy and converting it to more of itself. But what happens when it tries to eat energy that generates more energy through pure human stubbornness? She pointed to Dr. Webb, who was now rebuilding the planet's core to run on determination instead of nuclear fusion. We're turning this star system into something that operates on human rules instead of universal constants. Velandra's crystal body pulsed with alarm. You're changing the fundamental nature of reality. Just locally, Dr. Webb assured her, his galaxy eyes twinkling with amusement. We'll put it back mostly the way it was when we're done. Probably. The void swarm reached the planet's surface and began to flow across the landscape like a tide of hungry darkness. It consumed everything. Rocks, atmosphere, even the light itself. But when it reached the modified area around the ritual platform, something went wrong. The cosmic horror that had devoured entire star systems suddenly began to make a sound like the universe screaming in confusion. The swarm entities found themselves trying to consume energy that refused to be consumed, matter that generated more matter when destroyed, and space that insisted on staying exactly where it was out of sheer bloody-minded stubbornness. That's not supposed to happen, one of the swarm entities managed to communicate, its vast alien consciousness struggling with concepts it had never encountered. Welcome to human engineering, Sarah replied cheerfully. We specialize in things that aren't supposed to happen. The void swarm began to consume itself, its own energy-draining nature turning inward as it encountered matter that generated infinite power through pure determination. The entities writhed in confusion, their cosmic hunger turning into cosmic indigestion as they tried to process impossible physics. This is wrong, another swarm entity wailed. Energy cannot create more energy. Matter cannot refuse to be destroyed. Space cannot be stubborn. Dr. Webb looked up from his work, reality bending politely around him. Have you tried asking it nicely? Sometimes the universe is more cooperative if you say please. Above them, the endless darkness of the void swarm began to tear itself apart as it encountered human-modified space-time. What had been an unstoppable cosmic horror was now trapped in a logical paradox of its own making, consuming energy that generated more energy faster than it could be consumed. Kethvar watched in amazement and growing terror as the humans casually violated every natural law he had ever known. They weren't fighting the void swarm, they were confusing it to death with physics that ran on human logic instead of universal constants. Is this how humans always solve problems? He asked weakly. Sarah Chen grinned, her cybernetic implants gleaming. Pretty much. Why fight something when you can convince it that it doesn't make sense? As the void swarm continued to devour itself in confusion, more human ships began arriving from the exile zone. Each one was more impossible than the last, vessels that traveled by refusing to acknowledge distance, weapons powered by righteous indignation, and defensive systems that worked by making attackers feel embarrassed about their life choices. The monsters had arrived, and they were exactly as terrifying as the gods had warned. But as Kethvar watched the swarm tear itself apart in logical confusion, he began to understand why the gods had forbidden this. Not because humans were evil, but because they were too good at solving problems in ways that made the universe profoundly uncomfortable. The salvation of the galaxy had begun. Whether the galaxy would survive being saved remained to be seen. 3 weeks after the first human arrival, the war against the void swarm had become something that defied every military manual ever written. Kethvar stood in what used to be the collective's strategic command center, watching holographic displays that showed battles occurring in dimensions that technically didn't exist. More humans had arrived, but not in the way anyone expected. They didn't come with vast fleets or massive armies. Instead, individuals so dangerous they counted as entire military units simply appeared wherever they were needed most. Situation report, Kethvar requested, though he dreaded the answer. Commander Zhrix, whose cybernetic implants had been upgraded by helpful humans and now displayed information in impossible colors, consulted his readouts. The librarian arrived at the Kelnari system 12 hours ago. A librarian? Nimbus asked, his honor scars flickering with confusion. Margaret Thompson, retired head librarian from the Galactic Archive ship, Knowledge Seeker, Zhrix explained. She spent 40 years cataloging weapons that could kill abstract concepts. When the Void Swarm attempted to consume the Kelnari homeworld, she checked out a weapon that kills the idea of hunger itself. On the main display, they watched the impossible sight of cosmic entities, simply forgetting why they had been devouring star systems. The Void Swarm units in that sector wandered aimlessly through space, looking confused and somehow apologetic. The chef is having similar success in the Velthari cluster, Zhrix continued. Carlos Martinez, formerly of the human colony ship Determination. He cooks with stellar plasma and serves meals that violate thermodynamics. The swarm entities keep stopping their advance to ask for recipes. Vel Andra, whose crystal body now pulsed with patterns that hurt to look at directly, added her own report. The kindergarten teacher has been the most effective so far. Kindergarten teacher? Kethvar felt a familiar headache building. Miss Patricia Wong. She taught 5-year-old humans for 30 years. When the swarm invaded the Nimue Nebula, she gave them a stern talking to about sharing and playing nicely with others. Half the swarm entities are now in timeout, thinking about what they've done wrong. Through the massive viewing window, they could see one of the human war vessels approaching the station. It looked like a mobile star system that someone had convinced to travel faster than light by promising it could see interesting things. The ship's hull was covered in cheerful murals painted by the crew's children, and its weapon systems appeared to be powered by weaponized hope and industrial-grade determination. A communication channel opened, and a pleasant voice filled the command center. Collective Command. This is the UHS, Persistent Optimism. We're here to help with your reality stability issues. Reality stability issues? Kethvar asked weakly. Oh yes, the voice replied. We've been tracking massive destabilization in local spacetime. Apparently, someone's been modifying universal constants without proper permits. Don't worry, we brought the forms. Within hours, human engineers had swarmed over the command station, making improvements that left the collective representatives in states of existential terror. Gravity now responded to emotional states, which meant depressed crew members floated near the ceiling, while optimistic ones found themselves unusually grounded. The computer systems had been upgraded to display information in colors that conveyed not just data but the feeling of knowing something. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the human engineer in charge, cheerfully explained the modifications to a horrified group of collective technicians. We've improved your sensor array efficiency by teaching it to be curious. Your defensive systems now work by making attackers feel awkward about their aggressive behavior. And your coffee dispensers produce beverages that taste like childhood memories. But these changes violate 17 universal constants, protested senior engineer Vex Thor. Oh, those old things? Dr. Vasquez waved dismissively. We've filed the proper paperwork with reality management. They're usually pretty understanding about necessary improvements. The war itself had become something beyond description. Human forces fought across multiple dimensions simultaneously, using tactics that made seasoned military minds weep. They deployed battle strategies like aggressive friendship and overwhelming helpfulness. Their weapons included devices that shot constructive criticism and missiles that exploded into strongly worded suggestions for self-improvement. But the real horror, Kethvar realized, wasn't the humans themselves. It was how they were changing everyone else. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Entire species were developing human-like traits at an alarming rate. The logical Kelnari had begun exhibiting dangerous levels of optimism. The honor-bound Torvani were showing signs of stubborn determination that defied their traditional fatalism. Even the gaseous Nimue had started anthropomorphizing abstract concepts and making friends with their own mathematical equations. It's like an infection, Dr. Thlavar of the Medical Corps reported. Human thought patterns are spreading through quantum entanglement. We've had 17 different species request therapy animals, and the Velthari have started naming their mathematical theorems. The spread of human influence reached its peak when the crystalline collective of Zerion announced they had solved their population crisis by convincing empty space to be more cooperative about hosting new crystal growth. When asked how they had accomplished this, their spokesman simply said, "We asked it nicely, and promised to say thank you." That's when the gods decided to intervene. The manifestation began as a ripple through reality itself. Stars dimmed across the galaxy as divine attention focused on the growing human influence. On Prima Sanctum, the great obelisk blazed with light that hurt to perceive, and beings of pure geometric impossibility began to materialize throughout known space. The gods appeared as living mathematical equations, entities of such perfect order that looking at them directly caused temporary blindness and permanent existential confusion. They spoke in harmonics that made reality itself ring like a bell. Children of the stars. The divine voice thundered across all frequencies of communication. The humans must be stopped. Ober the Klam. The Plam. The Hum. Ober the Klam. The humans must be stopped. Kethvar, still branded as a heretical apostate but now serving as the collective's official human liaison, found himself in the unprecedented position of arguing with cosmic entities. Great ones, the humans are saving us. The void swarm is contained. The galaxy is safe. The humans are fixing the universe incorrectly. The gods' response came with enough force to crack nearby planets. They have convinced 3 star systems to operate more efficiently. They have taught gravity to be more considerate. They have made entropy apologize for inconveniencing people. Sarah Chen chose that moment to arrive at the command center, completely ignoring the divine manifestation floating in the main corridor. She walked past a being of pure cosmic mathematics while consulting a clipboard. "Kethvar," she called cheerfully, We've got good news and bad news. The good news is we've completely solved the void swarm problem. The bad news is the universe has started developing a sense of humor, and it's not very good at comedy yet. As if on cue, a nearby asteroid spontaneously rearranged itself into a smiley face and began orbiting the command station in a jaunty manner. The god entity pulsed with divine frustration. This is precisely what we wish to prevent. Sarah looked up from her clipboard for the first time, noticing the geometric impossibility floating nearby. "Oh, hi there. You must be one of the cosmic management types. Don't worry, we've got all the proper forms for reality modification. Would you like to see our environmental impact statement?" Kethvar closed his eyes and wondered if being cut off from divine grace was really the worst consequence of summoning humanity. From the sound of it, the gods were about to find out what happened when humans decided that even cosmic entities needed better customer service. The war against the Void Swarm was over. But the real battle, between human helpfulness and universal order, was just beginning. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Kethvar suspected the universe itself was starting to take sides. 6 months after the first humans arrived, the galaxy had become a very different place. Kethvar stood in what was now called the Diplomatic Relations Chamber, aboard the newly constructed station, Reasonable Compromise. Through the windows, he could see impossible sights that had become routine. Nebulae that had learned to dance, asteroids that apologized when they got in the way of ships, and a small moon that had developed a cheerful personality and now served as a tourist guide. The standoff between humanity and the gods had reached a peculiar equilibrium. The divine entities still insisted that universal constants existed for important reasons, while humans maintained that most cosmic laws were more like cosmic suggestions that could be improved with proper feedback and a customer service attitude. Commander Sarah Chen sat across from 3 manifestations of divine will in the galaxy's strangest diplomatic meeting. The gods appeared as beings of pure geometric impossibility, while Sarah had brought coffee, donuts, and a PowerPoint presentation titled Universal Improvement Initiative, a Collaborative Approach. "Look," Sarah said, clicking to her next slide, which somehow displayed information in dimensions that didn't technically exist. "We understand your concerns about reality stability. But consider this. Before we arrived, your universe was running at about 60% efficiency. We've got it up to 85%. And we're just getting started." The lead god entity pulsed with frustrated mathematics. "Efficiency is not the goal. Stability is the goal. The universe requires consistent laws or reality collapses into chaos." "Organized chaos," Sarah corrected cheerfully, "with clear objectives and good coffee. Here, try this." She offered the cosmic entity a cup of beverage that tasted like the concept of contentment mixed with just a hint of vanilla. Kethvar watched in fascination as a being of pure divine energy attempted to drink coffee. The god managed it somehow, though the process involved temporarily manifesting taste buds across 17 dimensions. "This is pleasant," the entity admitted reluctantly. "But it proves our point. You have made coffee that tastes like abstract concepts. This should not be possible." "Doctor." Marcus Webb looked up from his corner, where he was casually recalibrating the local laws of thermodynamics to be more user-friendly. "Everything's impossible until someone does it. Then it becomes Tuesday. Tuesday is not a natural force." "It is now," Webb replied mildly. "We convinced the universe that having a day specifically for getting things done was a good idea. Productivity is up 12% galaxy-wide. The negotiations had been going like this for weeks. The gods demanded that humans return to exile and stop improving things. Humans countered with detailed proposals for making the universe more convenient, efficient, and generally nicer to live in. The breakthrough came when Entropy's daughter materialized in the chamber, existing in her usual state of controlled dimensional chaos. She had been observing the negotiations from outside normal space-time. And now, she had something to say. "What if we made a deal? she suggested, her voice carrying harmonics from several universes away. Humans stay in the galaxy, but we contain our reality-fixing activities to specific regions. Think of it as quality, control, testing. The gods considered this. Mathematical discussions occurred at frequencies that made nearby electronic equipment develop feelings. Finally, the lead entity spoke. What assurance do we have that humans will respect these boundaries? Sarah grinned and pulled out a document that somehow existed in both legal English and pure mathematics simultaneously. Standard human warranty. We promise to only fix things that are obviously broken, demonstrably inefficient, or just really annoying. Plus, we'll try to put things back the way they were if anyone complains. Define obviously broken. Well, Sarah began, and Kethvar could see her warming to the topic. Take the Andromeda Galaxy. Their spiral arms are rotating in completely the wrong direction. Very inefficient. And don't get me started on how badly organized most black holes are. The gods pulsed with what might have been cosmic panic. After 17 hours of negotiation, including a break where the humans fixed the conference room's acoustics and taught the ventilation system to play mood music, they reached an agreement. The human containment zones would be established throughout the galaxy, specific star systems where humans could live and work without destabilizing universal constants. In exchange, they would serve as the galaxy's impossible problem specialists, called upon only when conventional solutions failed. The signing ceremony was held on Prima Sanctum, with representatives from all 12 collective species in attendance. The gods manifested in their full divine glory, while humans showed up in their usual manner, armed with clipboards, wearing comfortable shoes, and carrying emergency snacks. As Kethvar watched Sarah Chen sign a treaty with cosmic forces using a pen that wrote in liquid starlight, he marveled at how normal it all seemed now. 6 months of exposure to human logic had left him fundamentally changed. Where, once he had seen insurmountable problems, he now saw engineering challenges. Where he had once accepted limits, he now wondered if those limits had considered alternative approaches. The transformation wasn't limited to him. Throughout the galaxy, species that had once accepted the impossible were now asking uncomfortable questions like, why can't we travel faster than light? And, who decided that energy can't be created or destroyed? The Velthari had begun experimenting with crystals that grew in impossible directions. The Kelnari were developing computers that calculated using creative thinking instead of pure logic. The human quarantine zones will be ready within the month, announced Captain Martinez of the Engineering Corps. We've selected 17 star systems with convenient locations, interesting scenery, and space for expansion when we inevitably think of improvements. True to their nature, the humans had already begun making their assigned zones into showcases of impossible engineering. They built cities that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously, created restaurants where the food was always exactly what you wanted even if you didn't know what that was, and established shops that sold useful items like bottled determination, compressed stubbornness, and emergency hope in convenient travel sizes. The zones quickly became the galaxy's most popular tourist destinations. Beings from across known space came to experience wonders like gravity that worked by consensus rather than mass, weather that adjusted itself based on local mood, and public transportation that ran on schedule because the trains had been convinced that punctuality was a virtue. But perhaps the most telling change was in how the galaxy handled problems. When the Rigel system reported strange energy readings from their outer planets, the first suggestion wasn't to send a research team. It was to ask the humans if they've seen anything like this before. Kethvar, now holding the official title of Human Relations Coordinator, a job that came with hazard pay and excellent health benefits, found himself dealing with requests for human intervention at least 3 times per week. "Hi, Coordinator," his assistant announced. "We've received a priority message from the Andromeda Galaxy. They're reporting some kind of cosmic anomaly, and asking if we could borrow them some humans to take a look. Kethvar looked out the window of his office at the human zone closest to the collective capital. He could see Sarah Chen and her team loading equipment onto a ship that traveled by politely asking space to get out of the way. They were already packing for another impossible mission. "Tell them we'll look into it," he said finally. "But warn them that if they invite humans to solve their problems, they should be prepared for the solutions to be more interesting than the original crisis." As the human ship departed for another galaxy entirely, using a travel method that involved convincing the universe that Andromeda was actually much closer than it appeared, Kethvar reflected on what they had unleashed. The gods had been right about one thing. Calling on humanity had brought monsters into their realm. But they were monsters who fixed broken things, solved impossible problems, and made the universe a more interesting place to live. They were monsters who brought coffee that tasted like contentment and gravity that responded to emotional needs. They were exactly the kind of monsters the galaxy had needed all along. And somewhere in the back of his mind, as he watched Sarah Chen's ship disappear into dimensions that probably didn't exist until humans needed them to, Kethvar suspected that the universe itself was starting to enjoy the improvements. After all, even cosmic forces liked their coffee to taste like abstract concepts once they got used to the idea. The gods had forbidden asking for human aid, and yet they had summoned their monsters anyway. It had turned out to be the best decision the galaxy had ever made.